Where should you hit your attacking shots in men's doubles? When should you rotate? And how do you do this effectively?
Well, in this video, we're going to be answering these common questions, plus a lot more, so that by the end, you know exactly what you should and shouldn't do when playing men's doubles.
Yeah, and this advice is applicable for all levels, no matter if you're a beginner, intermediate or advanced player. So let's get straight into our first section, attacking in men's doubles.
Okay, so before we talk about what you should be covering in attack and what shots you should play, you first need to be in an attacking formation. Often, people will find themselves in a side-by-side formation in a rally, and this is good when you're in defence. But the aim is to get into a front and back formation, as this generally helps you to take more shots above the height of the net and maintain the attack. And this is where most of the points are won in men's doubles.
Now, you won't always be in an exact front and back formation in attack, but we'll discuss this more along with how to actually get the attack in the rotation section later in the video. So, when you're in this front and back formation, what shots should you both be covering? Well, the rear court player should generally cover this area here, and to be able to do this, they shouldn't be stood too far back. And the net player should generally cover this area, and to do this, they should be stood around here. If you look at the professionals, they typically stand quite far back, but they're also very quick to move forwards to get the block. If you aren't the fastest player, then you might need to stand a bit closer to the net, but don't stand too close, because then it's almost impossible to intercept shots past the service line, and this is a common mistake we see.
So that's where you should be on the attack. But what shots should each player actually be hitting to keep the attack and hopefully win the point? Well, we'd recommend the rear court player to hit a variety of shots, because as much as people like to think that hitting only smashes will be successful, at the next level up, your opponents will have better defence. So if you keep smashing, you'll become predictable and probably tire yourself out. So by using a variety of shots, like drop shots, half smashes, steep smashes and full power smashes, your opponents won't know what's coming and your attack will therefore be much more effective.
And we've just listed a lot of different shots there, so how do you know for every shot you play in a match what the right shot is? Well, we have 4 tips to help you with this. Firstly, you need to consider your partner's strengths. If they have a great strength of intercepting shots on their forehand side, then you as the rear court player should play shots to encourage your opponents to hit to this area.
And how do you do this? Well, you could smash straight down the tramline, because as long as your smash is good, then it's really difficult for your opponents to play a cross-court shot from this position. Or you could smash down the middle of your opponents, because a common reply is them trying to move you as the rear court player. But your partner can hopefully anticipate this and intercept it. Where you attack to will determine where you move to after, but more on this in the rotation section to come.
The second tip is to look at your opponent's strengths and, more importantly, their weaknesses. For example, if they're slow, then you might play lots of drop shots and even some clears. Next, if your opponent has lifted right to the back, we wouldn't recommend trying to hit a full power smash, as unless you have an insane smash or your opponents have really bad defence, you're likely to put yourself and your partner under pressure. But if you're in a really good position and your opponent has lifted short, then you should of course go for the smash winner. And this could be straight down the tramline, down the middle or even cross court.
Now, as we mentioned earlier, the rear court player should also be covering the mid-court, and what shots you should play from here depends on your position. So for example, if you're striking the shuttle above the height of the net and you look threatening, then you have the advantage. Here, we'd recommend either playing a soft shot like this to make your opponent move and set up a short lift, a hard drive to engage in flat and fast play, or maybe even a deceptive over-the-top shot to send your opponent the wrong way. But if you can't take the shuttle above the height of the net, then you can either block or push it into space to keep the attack. Or if you're really under pressure, then you should lift and move back into a side-by-side formation. So now let's move on to what shots the net player should be playing to keep the attack or win the rally.
Well, you ideally want to be keeping the attack by applying pressure or winning the rally. And whatever you do, it's really important to be active, constantly adjusting your position depending on where the shuttle is.
Getting advanced, you as the net player can purposely leave areas of the court free to entice your opponents to play there, and then at the last second you move over to intercept the shot. This is something the best players in the world do really well. Unlike the mid-court, if you're under pressure at the net and taking it late, then you should lift, especially if your opponents are ready for a net shot.
Now, some of the biggest questions we've been asked are, how does a net player know when to move back to help the rear court player? How does the rear court player know when to move forwards? And how do you go from defence into attack? Well, let's move on to how to rotate in men's doubles, and this also does apply to women's doubles. To make this section as simple as possible, we're going to go through the 5 most common situations where you should rotate.
The first situation is when your opponents have played a good, maybe flat lift, putting the rear court player under pressure, and the net player rotates out to the other side to help them. In general, they should move back when the rear court player hits a shot with over 70% power, as a soft block from your opponents is unlikely. The likely shot is the whip cross court, which the net player can then intercept and play a much better shot than the rear court player would have been able to.
But the net player shouldn't always do this. If the rear court player plays a drop shot from this position, then they will probably stay in to cover the net, as hopefully the rear court player has played this to give them time to get back on balance, and a soft block is more likely. And also, if the rear court player hits their shot straight down the tram line, then the net player might stay in to channel attack, because like we mentioned earlier, it's really hard for the defender to hit cross from this position.
It's also really important that the net player shouldn't get impatient at the front and try to force the rotation. If your partner isn't under a lot of pressure, then it doesn't matter if they're playing several shots from the back. And we also have lots more tips to improve your coordination with your partner later in the video.
Now, this all changes when the lift is short. In this situation, the rear court player would smash and move forwards afterwards. The most likely reply from a straight smash will be a loose shot into the mid-court, which the smasher can be moving forwards into and hopefully finish it off.
The net player has to notice this short lift and start moving back on the other side to let the rear court player move forwards, and they'll also be covering the cross-court shot. This is important because if you hit your smash to the middle or cross-court, then the most likely reply is to the other side, and your partner will be in a better position than you would have been.
This rotation works so well because it applies maximum pressure onto your opponents, and also means that the smasher doesn't end up hitting their partner. And it's important to mention that when doing these first 2 attacking rotations, that you need to think about the placement of your shots, like we said in the first section of this video.
So situation number 3 is where the net player is pulled out to one side and hits a hard shot. Because they're quite stretched, they likely won't be able to get the next shot, which is often a reactive shot to the other side. The rear court player should therefore move forwards to fill this gap and get the reactive shot. This rotation from the rear court player not only helps the net player out, but also means you can continue to apply pressure onto your opponents.
If your opponents do manage to play a lift over the top of both of you, then fair play, but you'd hope that they wouldn't be able to do this if you're properly committing to a net kill and choosing to play it at the right time. And in the worst case scenario that you're taking the shot below the height of the net and can't play a net shot to keep the attack, then you should lift and move back into a side-by-side defensive formation. And this moves us nicely onto our 4th and 5th situations where you're in defence but you want to transition into attack.
So if you're in this side-by-side formation and your opponent smashes straight at you, a great way to get the attack is to drive it straight back at them. If your drive is good, then you should move forwards, as the most common reply is your opponent hitting it soft. This is because they've played a smash which requires a bigger follow-through, so it's really hard to recover in time to generate enough power to lift it over your head.
And if they do manage to do this, then your partner should move back as they see you moving forwards, so that you can instantly get into this front and back formation.
Yeah, and it's important to mention that you shouldn't drive and just move straight to the tee, as you're then leaving big gaps down both sides of the court. Instead, you should be moving to where you think the most likely reply will be by looking at your opponent's body and racket positioning.
Our 5th situation is when you can turn defence into attack by blocking and following. It's really hard to do from a full power smash or slow drop shot, but you can basically do it in any other situation after you've lifted. The ideal situation is where your opponent is off balance and their partner is starting to move back, like they should be. This then creates space for you to block either straight or cross.
Generally, whoever plays the block would move in the direction they've played to, and their partner would quickly move round to cover the back half of the court. As long as it's a good block, your opponent should be taking it below the height of the net, which means you now have the advantage.
Now, if one of you in the partnership prefers the net, then they might look to move in after the other person has played a cross-court block. But there is a caveat to this. If both you and your partner are right-handed, for example, then you might not choose to play a block cross-court from the right-hand side, because then if they move forwards, you might not have enough time to move back and cover the lift up the backhand side.
That is such an important point. And another important point is that you should only move in if it's a good quality block. A quick tip to help improve the quality of your block is to be always moving forwards with your body weight so you can then continue this movement forwards. And if you realise it's not a good block, then you can hold your position. And before we move on to potentially the most important part of this video, if you're not sure on defensive positioning or how to defend, then check out our doubles defence playlist, which we'll link up here for you to watch after this video.
So, how do you actually coordinate with your partner to know what each other are doing? Well, we have 5 tips to help you with this.
Tip 1. Listen to the sound of the rear court player's shots. This is something we talked about in a mixed doubles video, but it also applies here to situation 1 and 2. If you hear a loud smash off the strings, you would stay back because it's more likely for your opponents to hit a hard shot back to you. But if you hear your partner hit a quieter shot, like a drop shot, then you'd move closer to the net, as from this position, your opponents can only really play a net shot or a lift. Doing this means you shouldn't need to look backwards, which not only risks your eyesight, but also means you can't see what your opponents are doing. And being able to see your opponent's body and racket positioning is so important.
Tip 2, you need to make clear and obvious moves, and don't hesitate. To get better at not hesitating, you need to improve your understanding of when to make these moves, which hopefully this video has helped you do. But to really help you understand this, then you need to follow tip number 3.
And this is watching more badminton, especially top-level badminton, where these rotations happen all of the time. And if you're wondering how you can watch lots of top-level badminton, then we'd highly recommend using Surfshark VPN, which we've been using for years, and as it happens, they're sponsoring today's video. A VPN, or virtual private network, keeps you safe and private online, and you can travel the world in one click. Signing up and setting up Surfshark VPN takes less than 5 minutes, and it has so many benefits.
If you're on a public Wi-Fi and want to watch badminton matches, it enables you to browse the internet safely by encrypting your data. If you want to watch multiple matches at once, with one subscription, you can have the VPN on unlimited devices. And most importantly, you can travel the world in just one click to watch any badminton match you like.
Yeah, and you can also watch your favourite shows on Netflix, like The US Office, if you can't access it when you're abroad. We use Surfshark VPN all of the time, and we'd honestly highly recommend it to anyone. So if you do want to get it for yourself, then use our link in the description below and enter the code BadmintonInsight so you can get this amazing offer of 85% off and the first 3 months for free. And even if you don't like it, they offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. So check out the link in the description below, which not only gets you the VPN, but also helps to support our channel. So thanks in advance, and thanks to Surfshark for sponsoring this video.
Okay, tip 4 is to communicate during the rally. This might be shouting to your partner things like yours, mine, stay in, or rotate. And if you notice your coordination has gone wrong a few times, then we'd also advise communicating in between the rallies too.
Tip 5, be adaptable. There might be times where your opponents do play different shots than you or your partner are expecting. And even if you have made a move, you might still need to change the direction to retrieve the shuttle. Also, in some situations, there's no definitive right or wrong move, so you might both end up in the same place. It even happens to the pros occasionally.
Oh, goodness me.
But with the tips we've given in this video, hopefully you'll reduce the chance of this happening and increase your chance of success.
But if you're finding you can't put these tips into use because you always lose the point on the first 3 or 4 shots of the rally, then you might want to check out our videos on the best serves and returns to do in men's doubles here. And if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like and smash the subscribe button if you haven't already, as we'll be releasing videos on routines you can do to practice all of these rotations at some point in the new year. Bye.